Welcome to the Not Just Leadership podcast hosted by Global Institute for Leadership. My name is Dominic de Moura McCarthy. It's a real pleasure to have you joining and listening in from across the globe, wherever you are. I'm here in Brisbane, Australia, and it's a real privilege and pleasure to be launching this initiative. The Not Just Leadership podcast is, as the title suggests, not just about leadership. We're going to be diving deep into different stories from leaders from across the globe, and also sharing about different themes and topics relating to leadership. So this podcast is a real great opportunity to learn together. I value your time, so I hope it's a resource that you can utilize and grow with. And we welcome you to our community of listeners, and thank you for tuning in wherever you are located. I guess the Global Institute for Leadership was created as an initiative to deliver world-class leadership and entrepreneurship programs, as well as mentorships and other initiatives. And through our Not Just Leadership podcast, we're really going to go a little bit deeper on these topics around leadership, different leaders themselves speaking to you from the studio, and journeying together as we grow and develop as leaders of today's world. Today's episode will be focusing around the theme of communication, and how the podcast is structured is that every second week will be myself bringing you a theme, and the alternative weeks will be a guest tuning in here live, presenting and talking with me in a conversation about their journey as a leader. And so I wanted to open with this really powerful quote from Erwin Raphael McManus. He's an influencer, leader, pastor, keynote speaker, author, a change maker, futurist. And it's really, really struck with me. It's really powerful. I want to share it with you to set the scene for this podcast. And I guess when we're talking about communication, I think we're really only going to scratch the surface in today's episode. And I'm sure this topic will come up throughout other episodes. And we'll dedicate more time to unpacking this essential element to leadership. And so in the words of Erwin Raphael McManus, he says, "Sounds create words, words create meaning, meaning creates communication, communication creates connection, connection creates community, community creates humanity, humanity creates the future begins with a sound." And so this really resonated with me, because when we think of communication, we think of, this fancy word to describe the way in which we tell a story, we convey a message. But if we really drill into it, it just comes back to a sound, because the sound creates the words. And those words can have a huge impact. Through our words, we can create a business and sell a product. We can implement a workshop. We can change a government policy. We can touch someone's life. We can give them a word of encouragement. So we can create meaning, as Erwin says, with those words. And through that meaning, we create communication. There's a bit of a philosophical approach to set the scene for the podcast, but I thought it was a really nice way of, I guess, surrounding the idea of leadership and how it really begins with the sound, the voice, and the presence. And so I want to unpack a few key ideas about leadership, 3 specific key ideas in today's podcast. And the first is that communication is more about listening than speaking. When you think about it, most people when they think of communication, they think of it's the ability to speak well. And yes, that's true, but the best communicators actually have the ability to listen very deeply. And so a leader who listens can make better decisions, can make more informed decisions, can show that connection with the people they're listening to. And how many times have we been, in situations in workplaces or in community groups or volunteer roles where people just won't listen. People just won't listen to the ideas you've got or to your perspective. They just want to talk. And listening is one of the fundamentals of being a good communicator. So ask yourself, when's the last time that you truly listened before you responded? If you've watched Jordan Peterson, for example, you'll see how often when he's asked the question, he actually takes quite a while to respond. He's processing, he's taking in the question, he's listening deeply, and then he formulates his response, and in a very articulate way he responds to the question. So I think when we think of communication, we need to know that it's not just about speaking, it's about listening as well. And I hope through this podcast that that's something that we can really hone in on and explore together as a community. The second key idea I wanted to also explore was that clarity beats complexity. When you convey your ideas in a clear way, in a straightforward way that people can understand, in simple English, if you're communicating in English, and I've had the privilege of traveling across many countries around the world and delivering different workshops and initiatives, and learning Portuguese and French as well, and being able to communicate in those languages and connect with people from those countries and cultures. And my approach actually when I learn a language is not to use the most complex terminology, the most advanced vocabulary. My goal is to communicate with confidence and with fluency, but in a simple way, because I don't want to get caught up in, getting bogged down in all the very technical structures. I want to be able to approach someone on the street or be in a supermarket and be able to communicate easily with someone from that country. And so to do that, I need to communicate in simple ways. That's not to say that we don't want to communicate in, we want to maintain correct language and grammar, but we want to communicate in ways that people understand us. You have to adapt to your audience. And so at times that might be making the message more simple, and at times it might be making the message more complex, depending on what situation you find yourself in. But at the end of the day, you need to be understood. You need to be clear, and you need to bring clarity. Today's leaders in the world, when they're communicating ideas, whether it's business leaders, political leaders, community leaders, how often do you leave, listening to something and you think, I don't really understand, or that doesn't make sense. They didn't communicate it with clarity. And so the great communicators are able to take really complex ideas and problems and make them accessible for everyone to understand. And so I think that's a really key thing to understand in communication is clarity. Don't focus on the complexity. Yes, bring an educated response. Yes, respond with confidence and structure, but bring a message that's clear and that people can understand. The other point that I wanted to touch on is nonverbal communication. Nonverbal communication, the tone of our voice, body language, presence. These communication tools are already speaking before you open your mouth. When you walk into a room, your posture, your demeanor is already speaking about your personality, about your role, about your comfortableness. Are you comfortable in that environment? And even if you're not comfortable, can you put your shoulders back? Can you lift your head up, put your chin up, and walk into that room with confidence? And I heard one leader recently say, command the presence of the room you walk into. And I thought that was a really beautiful way of describing it. When you walk into a meeting, when you walk into a networking event, when you walk into a local church, when you walk into a local sporting group, use your nonverbal communication to your advantage and treat it just as importantly as you treat your verbal communication. That's your posture, that's your hands, that's your head, your shoulders. Also, that's how you dress as well and how you look. Dress with confidence, dress for the occasion, dress so that you feel comfortable, and dress so that it's appropriate for the environment you're in. I've delivered different workshops throughout the Pacific Islands, in Latin America and in Europe, as well as here in Australia. And I think the nonverbal communication is it's got to be one of the key factors. And it's the real difference you notice from when you're presenting online in a meeting or a virtual workshop to presenting in person. We all know how that in-person connection is just completely different to an online presentation, because you can see the person's body language react in real time. You can so much. I think it's, let's say, easier to convey the message and to get on the right page with someone. If there's been a disagreement, it's often easier to resolve it in person, rather than an online message or even through a phone call, where you can have the opportunity to, listen to the person's tone. You might not be able to see the body language, but you can understand their tone a little bit more, easier than if it was just a message. And so nonverbal communication, I think, is as powerful as words. So those three ideas that I just touched on, communication is about listening. It's more about listening than speaking. Clarity beats complexity. People remember simple messages. Don't overcomplicate it. And the third key idea I mentioned was nonverbal communication is as powerful as words, and maybe even more powerful. So those are three key ideas to communication that I wanted to set this podcast, set the tone for this podcast, and just kind of scratch the surface on the topic of communication. It's a skill that I'm always practicing and improving. I'm not an expert, I wouldn't say at all, but it's something that I am always trying to improve. And I think as leaders and as community members, it's something that everyone strives to do well at is communication and speaking. So let's move on to some, I guess, 3 practical takeaways that you can take away from this podcast today. And I think number 1 would be becoming a better listener. So practice pausing before you respond to a question, to a comment, in a group setting, in a one-on-one setting. Take the time to listen. Take the time to listen and ask questions. And then consider yourself before you respond. There's no need to rush. Take your time to repeat what you just heard in your head to confirm that you've understood it. Formulate your response and then say it. The second practical takeaway I want you to remember from today's episode is simplifying your message. No matter what language you're speaking in, whether it's your native language, your second or third language, another language that you've learned, simplify your message. If you have a complex message to deliver, a speech or a workshop or a presentation, think about, okay, if I had to explain this in one sentence, what would it be? Bring it right down to those simple layman's terms, as we would say, where any person can understand. If I had to explain this whole concept, this whole 1-hour presentation, this whole 30-minute meeting, the purpose of this in one sentence, what would I say? And that will help you bring everyday language into your communication style to make it understandable for people. And I don't mean to be misunderstood here when I say simplify your message, to necessarily dumb it down or to avoid using structurally advanced grammatical structures or advanced vocabulary. But it's the way we formulate the message, make it clear to follow and easy to understand, and adapt it to your audience. You know your audience, you know who you're speaking to. And so adapt it to those people so that they will understand it. It's all about being able to respond to different environments as communicators and being able to read the room and knowing, okay, what are these people looking for? What do they want to learn? And if I had to explain this in one sentence, how would I? So using language that achieves this goal. The third practical takeaway that I wanted to share with you today is about building confidence when speaking. public speaking or presenting in general is not really, I guess, anyone's natural hobby. It's not something that, a lot of people would volunteer to do, but it's something you have to train. It's a muscle that you have to train, just like going to the gym or doing any sport. It's something that you have to do regularly. It's something that has to be expanded and built upon, and it's something that has to grow. So when you're speaking, speak with confidence, believe in yourself. If the people in the room don't believe in you, make sure you believe in yourself, and then they will believe in you, because you can show your confidence by projecting it from your inner self, from having that personal belief in yourself, and by being your number one fan, by, you know, stepping into that room with confidence. And even if you're feeling a little bit afraid or feeling nervous, probably other people might be feeling the same way. But if you believe in yourself, you'll convince other people to believe in you too. So communication, it's not just a skill we need in leadership. It's a way we can influence people for the better. It's the way we can make progress in society. We can make changes. We can implement activities and programs through communication. And so it really shapes the world around us and how we think and act. I mentioned Jordan Peterson earlier, and I wanted to just bring up another quote. And my earlier quote was from Erwin Raphael McManus, but this quote is from Jordan Peterson here. And he says, "When speaking to a group, remember that you are addressing individuals, not a collective. So approach it as if you were having a conversation with each person individually." And I think that's what, some of the world's greatest communicators like Jordan B. Peterson does, like Erwin Raphael McManus. You feel so connected. You feel like they're talking to you. If you've ever watched Gary Vee, a motivational entrepreneur and motivational speaker, he really draws you in. He's so intense. He's so passionate that you feel like he's speaking directly to you, and that he's telling you he's motivating you to get up and pursue that idea. Jordan Peterson, he brings such an advanced vocabulary. But at the same time, you really feel like he's having a conversation with you. And likewise for, other communicators that we look up to. They draw us in. They feel like it's an individual discussion. There's no one else in the room. It's just me and you. And hopefully this podcast, you might feel like that as well if I've achieved my goal and stuck by what I'm talking about. But I hope that you feel connected and that these tips stick with you throughout your journey. So I just want to bring it back to why I launched this Not Just Leadership podcast. And it's, as I said, it's not really, public speaking is not really a natural thing for anyone, and doing a podcast probably less so. But I felt like I had a lot of great stories that I can share with you. And I haven't really gone into any stories today, but there have been so many amazing experiences I've been part of. I guess the past really 7 years since I've been traveling the world and studying overseas and doing projects and initiatives and work and volunteer. And I really want to encapsulate that into a podcast. And I thought, leadership is a natural topic I feel like I can talk about. Entrepreneurship as well, communication, volunteering, youth initiatives as well, being a young person myself. But this podcast isn't just for young people, it's for people of all ages. So feel welcome. No matter what generation you're from, you're welcome to listen into this podcast, and I'm really grateful for your time. But as I mentioned, I've implemented a lot of different youth programs, leadership programs, entrepreneurship programs across a number of different countries. I would say about 15 countries now. And communication is always, the number one skill that I think I want to practice, and that I realize how important it is. Wherever you go, wherever you travel in the world, being able to communicate either in the local language or with an understandable English is really important. And I've had the pleasure of learning French and Portuguese, specifically Brazilian Portuguese. And that's just opened my eyes to, other parts of the world, other countries and islands and places that I never knew existed. And being able to meet people that I wouldn't have ever met if I hadn't learnt those languages. Or if I had met them, it would have been in a different context, and we would have been only communicating in English. There wouldn't have been such a deep connection. So I encourage you, if you're thinking about going into leadership, if you're an entrepreneur yourself or a leader in the community, focus on being a really good communicator. Learn another language as well, because it helps you get a better understanding for your native language. Because when you learn a second language, third language, you think about grammar structures. You think about the composition of verbs. You think about depending on the language, things like masculine and feminine, and aligning that with the noun. So you really think about languages in a different way. It kind of blows your mind when you think, okay, I just grew up speaking English. I never really thought about grammar, and of course we learned that throughout school and university, but it becomes kind of second nature. And so when you go and learn another language, you really go back to the basics, and that's a really beautiful process to go through. So this specific episode, isn't about languages, but I'm sure we can touch on that throughout the podcast. But it is on communication, and I think leadership begins with how we communicate. It's really important that it all comes back to communication, to listening to people, to understanding them, to conveying our message with clarity and confidence, and believing in ourselves as well. As I said, it's not something that you're naturally drawn to when you think of public speaking or doing a presentation in front of numerous people or delivering a workshop. Some people might have more of a natural ability than others, but it's really a muscle that we have to train and have to grow. It's something that we have to build up over time. Put ourselves in situations where we feel a little bit, not at ease, where it's a little bit uncomfortable, where it's a little bit nerve-wracking, but that's where the growth really happens. And so I'm really looking forward to journeying through this Not Just Leadership podcast with you, delivered by the Global Institute for Leadership. And I hope that you can get some benefit from it. I really value your time and that you've decided to listen in, and hopefully this first episode has hooked you in, and you're willing to come on the journey with us. And next week we're interviewing a really inspiring young leader as well. And we have a huge number of people lined up on the podcast. I think we're already full for 2025 for our guests. So it's going to be a big end of the year for this podcast. And, it's September in 2025 where we're recording. And I think it's never too late or it's never too early to start the project you want to do. So you might be a young person, you might be a more senior or elderly person, and you might be wanting to launch something yourself. Just go for it. Just believe in yourself and do it. Because if you don't do it, someone else probably will. And there's that role is waiting for you, that initiative is waiting for you to launch, that NGO, that organization, that business, that startup, that community group, that volunteer group is waiting for you. It's got your name written on it. You're just lacking the confidence and self-belief. And so I really want to encourage you, step into your purpose and your calling. If you've got something on your heart that you want to launch, like I've had this podcast on my heart for a while now, just do it. You can wait, and you can wait to purchase the best equipment. I wanted to really go all out. I'm someone who has a spirit of excellence. I love doing things with excellence, and so for me, I did invest in a really good equipment. But if there's a project you're launching, you don't have to start with much. I've set up a youth not-for-profit organization that now almost has 400 members and 20 volunteers across 12 countries. And we started that with a group chat on Facebook, just a group chat, 5.5 years ago. And it's now grown into a huge international NGO that delivers a number of workshops and leadership programs across the Pacific Islands. It's called the Pacific Australia Youth Association, if you haven't heard of it. And, it all just started from an idea and then from a group chat that I set up with a couple of friends and their friends and our colleagues and people we knew. So I hope that's the catalyst for you to step into your purpose and your calling. this podcast is really going to inspire you, I think, and some of the people we've got coming on, over the next few weeks and months and for the rest of the year will really, really amazing stories of people who are, doing their best to be a light in our community, in the international community, and just, doing things with excellence. As I mentioned, it's the best thing to do is to give our best in everything we do. So as I mentioned, I really value your time. I don't want to, take away more time than I should. And I feel like we've just scratched the surface on the topic of communication. But I really wanted to, go into this theme as our first episode. I thought it was a fitting topic to set the tone for the podcast. I feel like there's so much more we can talk about. I feel like I've got a lot more that I want to say as well, and I want to bring more stories to you. But I want to thank you for listening in. If you want to follow the Global Institute for Leadership, you can check us out on all the different social media platforms. Our username is @globalinleadership. And thank you for tuning into this episode. Stay tuned for our next podcast, which is coming in a week's time. I really appreciate it. And thanks once again. Take care.